Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hello, I'm Kerry L. Watt and welcome to the show. Now, I was reading recently on Forbes that there are apparently some set rules that women should follow to reach the executive level. And the Wall Street Journal said that one of the reasons why women hold so few executive officer positions and board seats in Fortune 500 companies is because they often lack the type of intangible skills that are needed to gain attention from management that lead to high-level roles. Now, my guest today has some fascinating insight into women who are or aspiring to climb the corporate ladder, and that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. So please welcome Kate Cousens to the show. Welcome, Kate.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Pleasure. So let's go back to that quote that I just said of women not gaining exec status because they lack certain intangible skills that are needed. Like, I know how I personally feel about it, but how does that make you feel?
I know, I have to say, as I heard you saying that, I was kind of like feeling my blood boil, wondering what on earth these so-called intangible things are.
I know, right?
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, it'd be really interesting to kind of really dig into that because obviously, I've written a book about this, and there's quite a lot of things that I think certainly men have a view on around why women might not make it, up to the higher echelons. One of which I came across in my career around the concept of gravitas. Which is that is a really intangible concept, but something that I kind of struggled with, and I think I can talk a little bit more about over the course of this interview, but that could be potentially where they're coming from.
And what would you say is the biggest misconception or myth that women have themselves about climbing the corporate ladder?
I think women, we put a lot of constraints on ourselves around whether we can do things or not. I think when we have families, it makes it more challenging to climb the corporate ladder, and so quite often we'll maybe say, well, we can't do a certain job because that's not going to work for home commitments, and that it's around, for me, actually looking at whether there's a way of making it work, with flexibility or with job shares, or with kind of approaching a role in a slightly different way than just the traditional kind of 9 to 5.
And I love in the book that you just mentioned, actually, I am currently devouring it. It is fabulous. It's called Ladder Climbing in High Heels. And I love that the chapters are song titles as well. It's brilliant. And one chapter I really love is entitled Tissues and Issues. Now, disclaimer, I have to admit, I actually did have that Charlotte Church album that you mentioned at the opening of the chapter, which is hilarious. I wondered if you could tell us about that Tissues and Issues and that crying in the workplace, or just being a female in that environment. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think the higher I climbed at the corporate ladder, the more emotional resilience became so important. It's something that I think as women, we don't necessarily give ourselves permission to to sort of recognize that actually there are things like monthly hormones that come into play. We have a lot going on, around our, monthly cycles, all of that sort of stuff that actually, nobody talks about, but it's a real issue. And, I'm quite an emotional woman, and I have been known, on several occasions to take to the toilet, with my Kleenex, because I think when you care passionately about something, then it's very, very usual to actually, get into the state of feeling, so emotionally attached that you do end up crying over things. And so for me, I think it's just around recognizing that and not trying to hide it. And, that doesn't mean to say that you want to be, crying in every meeting that you go to, but it is about recognizing that as women, we have slightly different kind of I suppose, human makeup than men. So there may be, more of a time when we need to look after ourselves in the workplace.
And I kind of think having that knowledge and just knowing that about yourself, whether that's you as a female or like your personal, the days, the weeks, and whenever that you are more productive, or that you might be a little bit more emotional that day, so you kind of hide away. Like, that's not a bad thing, is it, to know that and have that emotional intelligence? I personally think that's a good thing. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I categorically, agree with that. And, having managed a significant number of women in my career, I, used to actually make sure that, I talk to women on a one-to-one level about that, because, it is something that is incredibly real, but, we kind of hide it, don't we? We sweep it under the carpet, or actually even worse, men, I think, over the years have made it such that you feel embarrassed about it, because they'll say, oh, it was that time of the month and so she flew off the handle. And I'm sure listeners will have come across that kind of behavior, which I certainly did, and that's what makes it more, I think of an issue that people try and hide, women try and hide, because we don't want that to be taken into account. We want to be treated fairly, so having that self-awareness is really important, and just being kind, to ourselves at that particular time. I don't think that's something that we're necessarily all particularly good at. I know I'm not. I don't, I'll just keep going, and actually, sometimes think, well, I am more tired, or I don't feel like I can, keep going 100 miles an hour at certain times of the month. And it's okay to say that and to feel that.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And even if you take hormones and being a lady out of it, like, we're still we're all human beings. Like, you can't tell me that a man is on top of his game, really happy, like there's no, like, he's not grumpy, he's not tired, he's not hungry, he's not, like, do you know what I mean? Like, they will still have their moments as well, where they're like, do you know what, I'm just not feeling it today.
100%, exactly. And I think I went through quite a lot of emotional intelligence development and training, and actually what I saw working with men, because I worked in a predominantly male dominated industry, but with being a communication specialist, there were a lot of women in my sort of field. But what I realized with men was that actually they don't like to talk about, I'm making sweeping statements here, but the majority of the men that I was working with weren't keen on, checking in with their emotions and talking about how they feel. I think it's something that culturally in society, men haven't necessarily had permission to, to be that. And so, yeah, it's important to recognise that it's not just a female issue.
And I think you've got an incredible career history. Like, your CV is so impressive. You've worked with really big brands, being communications director, that's incredible. So what led you into going into the space of writing about women and the corporate ladder, rather than going through, your knowledge on communications?
Yeah, well, thank you, first of all. That means a lot, coming from you, Kerry. So, I suppose, having worked with a lot of women, what I noticed and what I recognised in myself was actually this concept of, we get in our own way sometimes. And I am really passionate about trying to help women see that actually it's okay to feel this certain way, and to almost, I suppose, shine a light on the fact that we might not always, we have a lot to deal with, I suppose. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm gabbling here, but from my perspective, I have had some interesting feedback throughout my career, and there were certain things that I think were quite sexist when I look back, but because I was quite young, I sort of just ignored it. And actually what I would love to, to happen is that women don't have these sort of barriers or constraints put in their way. Their diversity is recognised and actually celebrated. So I'm talking about things like the fact that, you know, I like the colour pink, I quite like makeup, and I'm quite a girly girl. You know, I don't think that hampers my ability to do anything, you know, it really doesn't. But I had some feedback along the way, which was, well, Kate, you might want to, you know, temper down the pink, or you might want to change, you know, what you're wearing, or not wear leopard print boots to the office, and, you know, that sort of stuff. And I'm thinking, why does that matter? You know, would that actually make a difference? The Prime Minister wears leopard print shoes, you know.
I love that.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just, I think, you know, the reason I wrote for women was because, you know, I am a woman, so it makes it easier for me to kind of share my perspectives, but also because I recognise that actually this is still an issue, you know, and we've got a lot of hurdles to jump still, I think, until we do get that equality at the top.
Yeah, and that's so interesting, actually, you saying about your experience of being told, you know, you can't wear these certain boots, or, you know, to change your image, you know, I mean, that's huge. I personally didn't experience that. From my own experience was just not being taken seriously, and that like knocked my confidence so much. I think because when you're kind of young, you're kind of trying to find your feet, so you do, you know, you go on the nights out with your team, you might, you know, certainly for me, I was, you know, that silly, you know, one that's laughing in the corner and stuff. And then when I kind of was like, no, actually, like, I want to be taken seriously now, like, this is my career, and nobody took me seriously. They just kind of saw me as like, you know, the skirt over there that makes the tea, or, you know, no one really took me seriously. So, and I'm not alone in feeling that, am I?
No, absolutely not. Exactly the same, you know, kind of experiences. And you know, that's the big shame, really, because, you know, sometimes, you know, and this isn't about knocking men, but sometimes, you know, men who go out on the work dues, and, you know, they can actually be progressed, and, you know, it kind of going off on golf trips with the boss and all of that sort of stuff. Whereas, like you say, if, you know, us as women are, you know, perhaps having a couple of too many glasses of wine, you know, that can be judged. And yeah, so I think, you know, that whole piece around your reputation and professionalism, you know, unfortunately, it does come into play.
So obviously you have this personal passion and your own experience. Is that what was the driving force behind you actually writing the book, Ladder Climbing in High Heels?
I love writing. I've always, I suppose, had this burning aspiration to write a book, and it just felt like the right time. You know, I was leaving a corporate role. I had a little bit of time on my hands, and I'd started a blog, actually, of the same title, and it just sort of led from there, thinking, well, I'm writing this blog, but actually what I'd really like to do is kind of put it all into one place and share it. And, you know, I suppose I just kind of cracked on with it, really. And I didn't really think, if I'm honest, this is my whole imposter syndrome getting in the way. I didn't really think anybody would necessarily find it useful, or would enjoy it. So I'm getting amazing feedback now, and I kind of cringe because I'm like, oh God, you know, I don't feel like I can call myself an author yet. But, you know, again, I think this is back to confidence. You know, I could easily go in and be a comms director in a business and feel fabulous and feel fine and on top of my game, because I've kind of overcome those confidence issues. When I'm now being interviewed as an author, I still kind of go, oh, am I an imposter? You know, and again, it's just back to, I don't think I'm alone in those feelings, you know, and I don't know if it's necessarily just a female thing actually either, but we do, you know, we do have these sort of foibles, don't we, as humans, where we perhaps don't necessarily, you know, like to sing our own trumpets, or play our own trumpets, should I say.
Definitely. And I think, and I personally have heard a lot, you know, where there's the negative messages, isn't there, of, oh, if someone, you know, bigs themselves up, that's big-headed, or that's cocky, or that's arrogant, you know, whereas actually they could, I mean, yes, obviously you can do it in a not very nice way, but most of the time it's just someone just trying to do the best they can. They're just putting themselves out there, and we can be quite negative about that. So then when we want to be that person, we can then think, oh, well, you know, what's everyone thinking of me, can't we?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a British thing as well, isn't it? You know, in the States, it's kind of celebrated, and I don't know, there just seems to be a kind of more sort of celebratory culture, I suppose. But yeah, I think that's the thing. We do need to kind of get over ourselves a little bit and promote ourselves, and learn that that's okay. If you want to climb the ladder, you've got to put yourself out there. You've got to, put your hand up, volunteer, and tell people that you want to, crack on and get ahead. But ambition, I think I put it in the book, ambition's such a dirty word. I was told, Kate, you don't want to be coming across as so ambitious, just stay where you are. And actually, I remember one boss of mine saying to me, a male boss, saying, well, if you keep progressing at the rate that you're progressing, then, by the time you're my age, I don't know where you'll be. And I'm thinking, well, it's got nothing to do with where I'm going to be at his age, and his but I think that's the other thing, is people project their own stories quite a lot in the workplace. Being aware of that is important.
Do you mean as in, if the way people talk or act, it could just be their own blocks sort of out, rather than actually a personal attack on you?
Exactly. And again, I'm not a kind of psychologist, but it's fascinating, the sort of stuff that comes up, and I can sort of spot it now, because obviously I've been around quite a long time, but I coach other women, and sometimes it's quite difficult, because you can hear the feedback that they've been given by perhaps a boss is kind of more about the boss than about the individual, but it's quite difficult, for them to then navigate that, because they're trying to obviously respect their boss and follow that advice, but at the same time tread their own path and be confident in their own kind of I suppose what they're passionate about and where they want to get to.
And I know you actually do coach women as well that want to climb or to support these women. You've got a Facebook group and the book, to help people shine their light. And I love that you say that. It's such a lovely phrase. What are the advantage for women who want to climb the corporate ladder to have that mentor and to have that coaching? What are the advantages for them?
To be honest, I think it's incredibly vital just to have an outside perspective. I have had several sort of coaches and mentors over the years, some of which were line managers who were very, very supportive, and others that have, I've been fortunate enough to be able to hire in, and I was in an organisation that was very, very supportive of coaching and mentoring. So for me, it's around just having somebody that you can talk to who has absolutely no affiliation to your organisation, that perhaps doesn't necessarily have particularly strong views about you as an individual, and you can just see from the outside looking in, and I think I do love coaching, and I feel that even now I find I need that, it's incredibly valuable. So just having somebody to have to bounce ideas off, but then have an external perspective, really.
And to kind of, it's bouncing those ideas off, but also like someone to kind of hold your hand and help you get to that next stage, would you say, as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because a few people have asked me, how many sponsors did you have throughout your career who helped you? And the answer is nobody, actually. It was all quite, I suppose I was just very determined and ambitious, but nobody ever sort of came along and said, right, Kate, we want to help you to get from here to here. But if you're fortunate enough to work in an organisation where that goes on, then absolutely grab that with both hands, because I do know women who have had that support, and it's phenomenal, and it's just fantastic. But it does depend obviously on the culture and the nature of where you work.
And how do we as women build that confidence to climb the ladder and hit the top spot? Where do we start?
Oh, so many things. I think the first thing for me is around knowing yourself. It really does start with knowing your strengths and playing to your strengths, but then not not kind of worrying too much about, maybe your weaker areas. And actually, once you know yourself, then you can, I think, really get to the point where you know what you're good at, what you want to do, where you want to go, and then you can kind of, I suppose, just maybe make a plan, and get there. I mean, I never really approached my career in a kind of, right, I'm going to move from this job to this job to this job. But I suppose, looking back, I did move around quite a lot, particularly earlier on in my career, to get a lot of different experience. And so, knowing yourself, knowing where you want to get to, vaguely, I think helps, and creating, a bit of a plan around that. And so, that's kind of my advice, I suppose.
I have to say, I was having a conversation with my sister recently about, being more confident, about career choices and where she's going and what we're doing. And it comes up quite a lot when I'm talking to business owners in my sort of, self-employed circle. And a lot of it I find is not just confidence, it's that empowerment. It's that, like, this is who I am, this is what I want, and just owning it, isn't it? Is that where the confidence comes from? Just like, this is who I am, this is what I want.
Definitely. And that for me took me an awful long time, to get to that point. I was in my mid-30s, I would say, until I actually realized, oh, hang on a minute, I'm okay the way I am. I don't need to be different. I don't need to change who I am. Actually, owning who you are and what you're good at and what you bring to the table. That's kind of where it, absolutely, like you say, that's where that empowerment kicks in, and you kind of care less, I think, and I don't think that sounds negative, but I think, when I was earlier in my career, my 20s, I just cared so much about what people thought of me. And I was, that kind of, I don't know, it stifled me in a way, and it held me back. But you care less, and you just think, actually, I'm just going to go for it. I'm just going to put myself forward and see what happens. Then, the sky's the limit, really.
And is there anything that you feel is important for people to know that we haven't covered today?
I don't think so. I mean, I think, for me, it's about finding your tribe. I know that's kind of overused and a bit that sounds a bit of a cliche now, but find people that you can be around that lift you up. I think I don't know, again, it's a kind of female thing, but sometimes we can get into that sort of cycle of, we'll go with friends and, and I know I do it with my friends all the time. It's like, oh, I need to lose half a stone, and, oh, I'm not where I want to be, or I'm not doing this. And it's easy to get into a cycle of sort of negativity, but actually finding women who are like-minded and that, support one another. And that's what, I'm aiming to do with my Facebook community, my Facebook group, because, I do think that's important, that actually we cheerlead more for one another as women. It's important, just to recognise that, you can support one another in a really positive way, and we're not in competition. And that's something else that came up in the book. But I did find that it was quite competitive at times when I was working alongside other ambitious women, and we were sort of pitched against one another quite often. And actually, it doesn't need to be a competition. You don't have to unscrew another woman's light bulb to let yours shine, I think the saying is. But it's important that we all kind of work together and stand together.
I love that. That's really beautiful. I think that's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that, Kate, and for being here today. So how can someone that wants to find out more hear about Kate Cousens and how you can help them?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure. And I have a blog which is called shineyourlight.uk. So you can find me there. And then I'm also over at Facebook. Well, I'm kind of everywhere on social media, but the main place that you can interact with me is in my Facebook group, which is the Shine Your Light group. Find me, Kate Cousens, on Facebook, and then you can click through from there. But I'd love to interact with any women who are either stepping out, on their sort of first rung of the ladder, or perhaps been climbing it for a while and, want a bit of advice and support. That's a really supportive group of women, and we make it fun as well. It's not all kind of serious corporate stuff. So yeah, that'd be great. I'd love to see you there.
Yeah, and I have to say, actually, to anyone who's listening, I've known Kate a little while, actually, personally, as well as kind of professionally, and the content, the advice, the support, certainly from the Facebook group community, and through the book and everything, there's just no words. It's incredible. So I really, really recommend that you go and follow Kate Cousens.
Thanks, Kerry.
Pleasure. Thank you so much, Kate. Bye now.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.